Young Turks. Cenk Uygur, John Iadarola with you guys today. So big show ahead. Lots of shows ahead. We also have election coverage that John and I are going to do along with Michael Shore. That's tonight at 8:30 p.m. 9:30 p.m. Eastern, 6:30 p.m. Pacific. One of the most important progressive races in the country is happening tonight. Christy Smith, just kidding. That's also happening tonight. But the most progressive, one of the most progressive candidates left in the country is Cara Eastman in Nebraska. She's an absolutely wonderful candidate. Her primary's tonight. And yes, California 25, the race that I was in, that special election is tonight. And whoever wins actually goes to Congress. It is not a primary. What I was involved in was a primary. Tonight's a special election to decide who goes to Congress. The Democrat appears to be trailing. We'll tell you about that in our special coverage. Quick note about my shirt, because everybody's wondering, obviously. So this is one of the best ones we got. I love this one. It says, if you can read this, you're not practicing social distancing. Unless, of course, you're reading it online right now. ShopTYT.com. People do squint to see it, and it is a little ironic. But yes, ShopTYT.com for this shirt. So lots of stories to get to as usual. I'll take the first one here, guys. And John, how are you, brother?
Oh, I'm great. Every day. New marvel. New wonder.
Yeah, indeed. Okay, good to see you. We have so many stories, so let's do them.
I think President Obama should have kept his mouth shut.
Apparently, Obama said something slightly critical of Donald Trump, but get a load of this privately. And that call was leaked, and McConnell can't believe that a former president would have a private conversation where they might say that, hey, you know what? The insane, lunatic, evil man in the White House is not doing so great. What a scandal. Okay, I'm going to get into why this ticks me off so much. But first of all, let's give you the outrageous comments of, apparently, of President Obama that set off McConnell. He said, Obama said about the Trump administration, it's part of the reason why the response to this global crisis has been so anemic and spotty. It would have been bad even with the best of governments. It has been absolutely chaotic disaster when that mindset of what's in it for me and to heck with everyone else is operationalized in our government. Wow. Scandal indeed. He used the word anemic and spotty. And he said heck, John. He said heck. Okay, and he said it on a private phone call to friends. How could the president have done this, John? Let's have a legitimate debate over it.
Yeah, well, I think it was classless of him to say a far milder version of what virtually everyone in the country is saying. It's ridiculously hypocritical. Obviously, he doesn't believe, well, I mean, he doesn't personally like Trump, but when Trump leaves office, let's hope that happens. You think Trump's going to stop tweeting about politics the day after the election? Nobody thinks that. His fans don't want him to. Republicans don't want him to. So again, it's one of those things where they are saying a thing as if they are giving you an idea of a standard they want applied, but it's not. It's not a universal truth or anything like that. They just don't like what Obama is saying. And again, privately, Obama's 100% right, obviously. Obama had to deal with his own potential pandemic. And so this is something that obviously he's going to be comparing and contrasting in his mind how his government responded and how Trump is responding to this. And if you care at all about the country and its people, whether you served as a public servant or not, you're going to have opinions about this. That's the most natural thing in the world.
Yeah, in fact, I'm going to criticize Obama in the opposite direction in a second. First, let's give you McConnell's whole conversation here with a Trump, a family member. So that's where he brings in the line that John referenced, classless. So get a load of this.
President Obama should have kept his mouth shut. We know he doesn't like much this administration is doing. That's understandable. But I think it's a little bit classless, frankly, to critique an administration that comes after you. You had your shot. You were there for 8 years. I think the tradition that the Bushes set up of not critiquing the president who comes after you is a good tradition.
Okay. Oh my God, etiquette has been breached. Oh, there was a tradition that was set, by the way, it was not set by the Bushes. It's been around for a long, long time in America. That is why Obama, I think, has done a terrible job of opposing Trump. I'm going to get to that in a second. But the idea that McConnell would say that Obama is classless when he's defending Donald Trump, the most classless person in American political history, and no one could argue otherwise. His followers are proud to be called deplorables. I don't even think the most deplorable of the deplorables would argue that Trump is classy. They like him because he has no class. And so to say that Obama, I mean, of all the critiques or criticisms or insults that you could do of Obama, I don't know anything less factually based than classless. And how, I mean, and get a little the irony of saying that, hey, you know what, Obama's breaching etiquette, so I'll tell him to keep his mouth shut. Does that sound like good etiquette? Okay. And I mean, look, I give you 1,000, literally over 1,000 tweets and 1,000 videos about Trump to prove my point. Just, I'll give you one from today. He declares in capital letters, Obamagate makes Watergate look small time. He was asked by a reporter what Obamagate is, and he's like, you know, everybody knows. No, nobody knows. You made it up. It's not a thing. There was no crime. Maybe you think Obama being Obama is a crime. They're like, oh, my God, we had a black guy in office. Well, whatever you think. He personally insulted you during the White House Correspondents' Dinner once, and you apparently have never let that go. What the hell is Obamagate? So get a load of McConnell's rules, John. Donald Trump can say the most horrific things about Barack Obama, make up crimes he didn't commit, not even specify what the hell they are. Apparently, it pressures Justice Department to look into those non-existent crimes. He could make up a birth or conspiracy theory about Obama. He could say terrible things about Bush and every other president and every other living politician, and dead ones too. But my God, can you believe Obama in a private conversation? So you look, we don't have to go into the hypocrisy again, but John, let's talk about the media reaction. Because to me, they let McConnell get away with it. He says these unreal hypocritical things, and they're like, oh, yeah, that's totally normal. Yep. Oh, let's have a debate over it. No, there's no debate. You just got to call the guy a hypocrite, a liar, et cetera, and move on with your life. This is not 50-50.
Yeah, 100%. I think that what he should have done, McConnell, is he should have shut his mouth. I mean, there was a tradition set up by Harry Reid that he didn't criticize Bush, you know, once he was the former president. And that was a fine and glorious tradition that's now being ruined. No. Yeah, and it wasn't a public comment anyway, even though it should be a public comment. Look, if presidents want to, you know, move on from their post and mostly lead a private life, I get that, but they still obviously should have some sort of like skin in the game a little bit. And there's a lot. Look, we obviously disagree with Barack Obama on quite a number of the things that he did as president, but there are Americans that still admire him, and in one of the most chaotic times of our life, probably want to hear more from Barack Obama. I don't know why, if there is a market for that, why he wouldn't provide at least a little bit of a response. And it's an election. Of course he's going to get involved. It's all so thoroughly fake from floor to ceiling. And Mitch McConnell, you're right. The media has done so much work in trying to shield the American people from understanding who he really is, pretending that there's an ounce of dignity in him. No, he's an incredibly pragmatic, hypocritical, valueless politician. That's all. He's done a good job from the point of view of his side. But no, there's no class, there's no dignity, there's no respect for tradition. They stole a Supreme Court seat. He doesn't get to hide behind any of that stuff.
Yeah, and so now to turn to Obama, I agree with you completely, John, and I'll go further as usual. There's some on the right are saying, oh, yeah, like this call was leaked. He meant to say this, so it's not really private, it's public. Point number one, who cares? Point number two, if you're right, then then Obama should speak up publicly and be much louder. I don't care if you're right or not. For God's sake, get in the game, man. Etiquette, with Trump in office and 83,000 people dead from coronavirus, let alone every other disaster. We're talking about etiquette. Like Trump doesn't listen to etiquette or rules, written or unwritten, or laws. And Obama's worried about etiquette. Here, I'll give you another quote from that call. He said, I'm hoping that all of you feel this. He's talking to a lot of his former administration officials, or two or three of them on the call. He says, I'm hoping that all of you feel the same sense of urgency that I do. Whenever I campaign, I've always said, this is the most important election, especially obviously when I was on the ballot. That always feels like it's the most important election. This one, I'm not on the ballot, but I'm pretty darn invested. We got to make this happen. Whoa, I didn't know you would come on fire like that. You're pretty darn invested? Wow. Light them up. Yeah. Light them up. So if this is the strongest Obama has, and if, let's say, the critics are right, he says he's pretty darn invested and then leaks that call. Ooh. This is exactly why Democrats lose elections.
Yeah, you know that he's pretty darn invested when the only way you can tell is when a call is leaked. Yeah, and look, there might have been elections in the past where the previous president of that party could have sat it out. Sometimes they even want them to do that. Not this time, not with this candidate, especially Joe Biden, who ran his campaign on, I know this guy, Barack Obama. He desperately needs Barack Obama to be pretty darn invested, and publicly, not privately. Again, not to appeal necessarily to people like you or I, because again, we have these major disagreements with what was done during the Obama years, but for the sort of people that Joe Biden believes he can appeal to, there's nothing he needs more than for Barack Obama to be a dominant face on the campaign trail, probably the dominant face, more so than Joe Biden, because Barack Obama can still hold a complex train of thought, explain himself. I think that people have a sort of weird view of Barack Obama that doesn't necessarily track with what he actually did, what he actually prioritized. But from Joe Biden's point of view, just pragmatically, if he expects to win the election, he desperately needs Barack Obama to be pretty darn invested in fact and not just in word.
Yeah, so Barack Obama is, according to the polling, the most popular politician in the country still to this day. So you want to get in the game? Or you're going to sit there and make private calls, leaked or otherwise. So, and I mean, look, I know that he's being partly self-effacing in the beginning of that statement, talking about like, hey, normally the ones I'm in are the most important elections. I assume he's saying that somewhat tongue-in-cheek. But if him even saying like, hey, I'm pretty darn invested in this one, even though I'm not on the ballot, it's just offensive. Like, we're all invested. I mean, our lives are on the line here. And from the comfort of his etiquette-filled house, Obama is telling us, oh, hey, I might get in at some point. There's less than 6 months left. Get in the damn game. And if Trump complains, good. You're supposed to be fighting him. You're on the other side. You're the president and the popular former president of the other party. Get in the damn game. And look, I think to this day, they don't understand the severity of the situation. Now, we're going to play you a clip here from this audio of the phone call that was leaked. And there, he seems to be finally getting it. 3.5 years too late, but listen to him. All right, and then we'll comment on it.
Over the last 24 hours, I think has been somewhat downplayed about the Justice Department dropping charges against Michael Flynn. That's the kind of stuff where you begin to get worried that basic, not just institutional norms, but our basic understanding of rule of law is at risk. And when you start moving in those directions, it can accelerate pretty quickly, as we've seen in other places.
You're beginning to worry. Mm-hmm. Obama is beginning to worry. If this really is a private conversation, this is how he talks to his friends. 3.5 years into the Trump administration, you're beginning to worry that he might not follow the norms of institutions, and that this might be bigger than that. That he might actually want to see. Okay, no, and then this incredibly tepid response from Obama, and McConnell burns his house down, tells him to keep his mouth shut. And by the way, it's not just McConnell. Last thing here, Chuck Grassley, in the Biden world, mainstream media world, Chuck Grassley, one of the old school Republicans, the fever will break, as Obama himself said, and Biden talked about, oh no, then we can make real deals, and this is the era of Trump will be over. Good, reasonable people like Chuck Grassley. Stephen Dennis reporting that Senator Grassley, and this is a tweet of his, on the Senate floor says that Michael Flynn was entrapped, calls it tyranny, dings Mueller, wants to know what Obama and Biden knew about it, and says people responsible, quote, ought to be prosecuted. You schmuck Joe Biden. You think that they're going to be reasonable if you win? No, they're looking to prosecute you already 6 months before the election, and that's one of your buddies, old-timer Chuck Grassley. It's not just Donald Trump, and it's not just Mitch McConnell. It is a great majority of the Republican Party. They love authoritarian figures like Trump, and they will do anything to seize power and keep it. Their chances of winning elections going forward demographically are greatly diminished. So they have moved on to the fascist state right now, where they're trying to seize power outside of democracy. And meanwhile, Obama can barely put his shoes on 6 months before an election, and yet McConnell says he's classless. Actually, Obama should go out there and tell McConnell to go kiss his class and go full bore and go after Trump and McConnell with everything he's got.
I doubt that's going to happen.
If Obama doesn't tear into Trump, which he's not going to, he doesn't tear into anybody. Although, to be fair, he did it against McCain and Romney when it was his class on the line. So it's whether it was tongue-in-cheek or not, he's actually quite serious. When he's running an election, Obama can be quite vicious.
Yeah, election Obama's very different. We might end up seeing that. I mean, there's going to be less rallies, less big speeches because of the nature of the pandemic and everything. But that is what Biden needs. Is he needs that, not the Biden, not the Obama where I know JR in cutting that must have been thinking, man, Obama really did take some long pauses. That like trying way too hard to be contemplative, No, they need fired up Obama. And so far, he can say he's invested, but that's what we need, and we're not seeing it.
Yeah, we're not seeing it at all. Get in the game. All right. John, you got the next story.
Yes. We're about 20 minutes in, though. So why don't we take our first break, and when we come back, we'll have a little bit from Dr. Fauci and some of the other medical professionals testifying before the Senate today.
We need to talk about a relatively new show called the Republic, or UNFTR. As a Young Turks fan, you already know that the government, the media, and corporations are constantly peddling lies that serve the interests of the rich and powerful. But now there's a podcast dedicated to unraveling those lies, debunking the conventional wisdom. In each episode of the Republic, or UNFTR, the host delves into a different historical episode or topic that's generally misunderstood or purposely obfuscated by the so-called powers that be, featuring in-depth research, razor-sharp commentary, and just the right amount of vulgarity. The UNFTR podcast takes a sledgehammer to what you thought you knew about some of the nation's most sacred historical cows. But don't just take my word for it. The New York Times described UNFTR as consistently compelling and educational, aiming to challenge conventional wisdom and upend the historical narratives that were taught in school. For as the great philosopher Yoda once put it, you must unlearn what you have learned. And that's true whether you're in Jedi training or you're uprooting and exposing all the propaganda and disinformation you've been fed over the course of your lifetime. So search for UNFTR in your podcast app today and get ready to get informed, angered, and entertained all at the same time.
All right, back on the Young Turks, Cenk and John with you guys. So earlier today, I did a live video about how Mitch McConnell is also trying to pass an amendment to the Patriot Act, which would allow the Justice Department, in this case, led by Pepe the Frog, look into anybody's web browsing history without a warrant. They could spy in on anyone and look at everything you've ever looked at on the internet. Well, if that's true, my God, do you need NordVPN.com/TYT? Not if it's true. It is true. That's what they are trying to do. They haven't yet passed the bill. And VPNs protect your computer so that no one can figure out that it's actually you or your computer that's browsing that stuff. So 70% off a 3-year deal plus an extra month off if you use the code TYT, NordVPN.com/TYT. Unfortunately, it's a perfect time for that. Yeah. All right, your comments. Captain Cornball from the member section says, I bet he was wearing a tan suit when he said it as well. Okay, good point about absurd criticism of Obama. Progressive Pirate says, I'm sure Trump won't criticize the new administration after he's out of office. Hilarious. Cousin Vinny says, Cenk Pack will show them what we think of their etiquette concerns. We'll see what happens with that, man. I'm trying to put that together. I don't know if it'll happen. I would love for it to happen. Anyway, we'll get back to you on that. But yes, if it does happen, we'll show them etiquette. Sarah from 2K21 on YouTube Super Chat says, Trump is scared of Obama. That is very likely true. I wish that Obama would give him something to be scared about. It's my commentary. Real Time, last one on Twitter, says, they're all about civility till a black man speaks. Yeah. Exactly. All right. If you want to be a member, get your comments read more often. And first on the show, tyt.com/join. Oh, sorry. Let me take a look at the thermometer real quick. Audience fundraising, super important. Trying to keep Young Turks healthy and sustainable. We're trying to get 200,000 this month. Right now, 105,426.
Wow.
Look, I think with all the programming we have today, we also have old school and then the special election coverage. I think it's possible to get to 110. So tyt.com/go. Let's please try to get it to 110 today. All right, John, you're up.
Okay, let's do it. Earlier today, Dr. Fauci, as well as other members of the coronavirus response team, were questioned by senators remotely, and there were some good interactions, including this one involving Senator Bernie Sanders.
Official statistic, Dr. Fauci, is that 80,000 Americans have died from the pandemic. There are some epidemiologists who suggest the number may be 50% higher than that. What do you think?
I'm not sure, Senator Sanders, if it's going to be 50% higher, but most of us feel that the number of deaths are likely higher than that number because given the situation, particularly in New York City, when they were really strapped with a very serious challenge to their healthcare system, that there may have been people who died at home who did have COVID, who were not counted as COVID because they never really got to the hospital. So in direct answer to your question, I think you are correct that the number is likely higher. I don't know exactly what percent's higher, but almost certainly it's higher.
So what you saw Dr. Fauci saying there is what doctors, especially those particularly working in the New York area, have been saying from the very beginning. There is every reason to believe, statistical reasons to believe, that this is a pretty vast undercount, particularly in New York. The only question is by how much. But we know that excess deaths spiked, especially in the early weeks of the pandemic in New York City. So is it, 1,000 more? Is it 5,000 more? Maybe someday we'll find out. But it is definitely an undercount, particularly in that area.
Yeah, so right now, as things stand, America has over 1.4 million cases, more than 5 times, or the 5 largest countries combined, 5 largest in terms of the number of cases. So we're number one. We're leading the world. We have over 83,000 deaths already. Remember, Trump, of course, famously said we would have none. He said it would, quote, magically disappear, and soon we would have no cases. Instead, we have millions of cases, 83,000 dead, and as Dr. Fauci points out, likely a lot more. It's almost certainly an undercount. It can't be an overcount. The people who died were tested for coronavirus, had coronavirus, and died of coronavirus. So at a minimum, it's what this number is.
Yeah.
But a lot of people died, especially because the disease was here earlier than we realized. It actually had reached our shores in Santa Clara County, in California, and other places much earlier than originally suspected. There were already a bunch of cases that we didn't know were coronavirus cases, and many people died of that, let alone the undercount that happened in New York and New Jersey, et cetera, as Dr. Fauci and others alluded to. So, yes, I'm sure the number is higher.
Yeah.
To me, honestly, it's not that material. So let's say it was 85,000 or 93,000. Now the death toll is so high, it's become a statistic. And so it's gut-wrenching in its reality when it happens to someone you know. Unfortunately, for people who don't have, well, fortunately that they don't, for the people who don't have anyone that they know or love or care about that has had it, they don't see it at all. There are no videos coming out of the hospitals almost at all. And you're not seeing the carnage. So 83,000 or 93,000, it's just a number at this point. And people who believe in science and facts think the number is monstrously high, and we're aghast at what has happened. And for the Trump people, they don't believe in numbers. So unless it happens to them or someone they can see with their own eyes, they think, Trump, it's all a hoax. I mean, Trump says the number is inflated. Who the hell would inflate it, and for what reason? Doctors are not politicians. They're not going to lie and say, oh, well, that guy died of a car accident, but let's call it coronavirus.
Yeah.
That's insanity.
100%. Yeah, and in terms of the numbers, like, I feel like we should know the number, because I feel like anyone who died, especially if we believe that they died and could have been saved, should be counted, that we should have an accurate reflection of what actually happened. But in terms of like the total number, it's not like if we had the accurate number, then we would be horrified. I mean, I'm looking at a tracker, and so far today, there's 1,500 reported deaths. So the number of people who will die of coronavirus while we're recording this hour of the show would be, if it happened at one time from any other cause, would have been a week's worth of news coverage. If that many people had died in one school shooting or whatever, it would have been the biggest political event. 1 hour of the coronavirus. And when you pile those hours on top of each other, it just becomes impossible to actually understand. You can see the number, you can think about it a little bit, but you can't care 80,000 times as much about this number as about one person dying, which is what seems like should be merited. But we do have to talk about this, because on the other side, I mean, we're doing a story about this. You know, Tucker Carlson and Laura Ingraham, their whole show will be spreading misinformation and conspiracy theories about this. We could show you any number of different clips. Here's a little bit of Brit Hume and Tucker Carlson talking about this area.
The New York Times and Washington Post, I thought, as if on cue, published stories about, well, it looks like we were obviously underestimating the fatalities from this, because, you know, before we really knew more about it, a lot of people died, and undoubtedly they had it. So we missed those, and they should be in the coronavirus death count, and so on. And if everybody's being automatically classified, if they're found to have COVID-19 as a COVID-19 death, we're going to get a very large number of deaths that way, and we're probably not going to have an accurate count of what the real death total is.
And there may be reasons that people seek an inaccurate death count, but we can address that later.
I
really appreciate your clarity.
I just don't think Dr. Birx and Fauci are doing that, but I think they were working on what they had.
I'm not accusing them of that at all.
Right.
Yeah. No, I'm not accusing individual people, because then I would have to argue for why those individual people would do that. I'm making blanket statements without evidence about an anonymous group of people so that it's not verifiable, because that's way easier. It's way easier to pull one over on my audience if I'm speaking vaguely and asserting that people are doing crazy things without being able to explain exactly why that would be.
Well, why would any doctor risk their careers to say that someone who died of cancer actually died of coronavirus? What an insane thing to do. But maybe because the right wing is insane, they assume everyone else is insane. They're like, well, I'd fake everything. I'd lie about everything. So I assume doctors and scientists are also faking and lying about everything. That's entirely possible.
I think it's simpler. I think it's just motivated reasoning. They cannot have people out there acknowledging the horror of what has happened. And so whether they're able to come up with a good excuse for why we shouldn't consider it to be 80,000 people or not, they just have to say it's too high. And the thing is, those ridiculous arguments, so vague. There's nothing there. I mean, we can see the number of excess deaths spiking during the early weeks of the lockdown in New York City. I would love to hear an alternative explanation as to why so many people just started spontaneously popping up dead at their homes while a pandemic was going on. But that wasn't related to the pandemic. Feel free to do that if you want to, Tucker Carlson. No, but it doesn't matter, because their audience totally buys it. If you look on Twitter, if you see the comments, they just accept, no, the number is far, far lower than what we're seeing. I don't know exactly how much lower, but enough that I don't have to care about it. Enough that I don't have to think critically about Donald Trump, who obviously didn't care about this and bungled it from the very beginning.
Yeah, well, they're not going to care until it comes to their neck of the woods, which leads us to the next story.
You're talking about Rand Paul?
Yeah.
Okay, well, that could have been a smooth transition, but then I got involved. Okay, Rand Paul had something he wanted to say to Dr. Fauci today. Take a look.
I think we ought to have a little bit of humility in our belief that we know what's best for the economy. And as much as I respect you, Dr. Fauci, I don't think you're the end all. I don't think you're the one person that gets to make a decision.
Thank you for your comments. I have never made myself out to be the end all and only voice in this. I'm a scientist, a physician, and a public health official. I give advice according to the best scientific evidence. There are a number of other people who come into that and give advice that are more related to the things that you spoke about the need to get the country back open again and economically. I don't give advice about economic things. I don't give advice about anything other than public health. So I wanted to respond to that. The second thing is that you use the word we should be humble about what we don't know. And I think that falls under the fact that we don't know everything about this virus. And we really better be very careful, particularly when it comes to children.
Yeah, and they're pushing for kids to go back to school early on, to go back to Tucker Carlson. He said, well, kids don't seem to get it. They don't seem to get sick, which isn't true. And kids have died, and there are teachers, and they would come back and bring it back to their families. He brought on a doctor to try to buttress his point, and the doctor instantly corrected him, saying that kids can actually transmit coronavirus. There's no reason to believe that they can't. But they're playing fast and loose with the lives of kids around the country because they think it's the sort of issue that's going to pull on people's heartstrings or make them think, yeah, we don't want to do anything, that's going to keep kids from experiencing their life. It seems like a winner to them, but obviously Dr. Fauci wasn't playing his game.
So as I was watching that for the second time, as we're playing it live, it occurred to me, Rand Paul already had coronavirus, so he presumably has antibodies and he's presumably immune, at least for some period of time. The more that right-wingers get into that category, the more they're not going to give a damn about anything. Mm-hmm. If they're immune, they're going to be like, you die, what do I care? I'm already safe. My God, watch out, buckle up. When enough of that happens, then there's going to be no rules at all. So, look, should we be concerned? Rand Paul doesn't have to be concerned anymore, but should his home state be concerned? Well, let me give you some numbers real quick. Top 10 areas that recorded surges in the last 7-day period, their total surge was 72.4%. So that's a significant increase in coronavirus cases. Where were they? Nashville, Tennessee, Des Moines, Iowa, Amarillo, Texas. Hey, look at this. Number 1, Central City, Kentucky, with a 650% increase.
Number 1.
Senator for Kentucky, number 1, Mitch McConnell, who says, do we really need another relief bill? I think we're past this. And, of course, the other senator from Kentucky, Rand Paul. And it doesn't stop there. Dallas's increase is 116.8%. Charlotte and Kansas City increases are 200%. So rest of the country, welcome to coronavirus. Just as they're telling you got to open back up, don't listen to scientists and doctors like Fauci. Right now, it is beginning to rage in the middle of the country.
Yeah, and that's what we want to avoid. But unfortunately, what has happened is what we predicted from the very beginning, that if the lockdowns are successful and they do start to reduce the number of people that are dying and getting infected on a daily basis, then the case will be made that it was never necessary. It wasn't that bad. I guess the estimates were too high. And like clockwork, that's what the media has said on the right wing. That's what the politicians are saying. And so unless we get miraculously lucky in a way that no scientist expects is going to happen, we are going to start to see the spread of coronavirus across the country, and in particular in these areas that were the most hot to get out there and reopen prematurely.
Yeah, and lastly on this, as I watched Rand Paul the first time, this morning, it really made me sick to my stomach, because these guys will attack anything related to facts, science, reason, logic. All they care about is their propaganda. So he takes Fauci, who's a scientist, and says, oh my God, no, I don't have all the facts at all. I'm doing the best I can, and I'm giving you the latest information that a consensus of scientists agreed to based on studies. And Rand Paul goes, so you're not a know-it-all, okay? You're not the end-all of this. On the one hand, you have scientific facts, and because scientists are conservative by nature, not politically, but because of the nature of science, but I guess you're not sure. On the other hand, I have my propaganda, and I am 100% sure of my propaganda. And I have my stock market portfolio, and I'm 100% sure of my stock market portfolio, and I'm also sure that I'm immune. So let's get back out there, and especially if the old have to die, so what? Let's get this open back up. Scientists, they don't know anything. The end all. You think you know something, scientists? No way. I know better because I'm a right-winger. That's the kind of animals these guys are.
Super fast. I want to tell you one theory about why he would do what he did today. And it's because he knows it's going to play well amongst the people that just desperately want to reopen no matter how many people it kills. He retweeted Laura Ingraham, who said, Rand Paul saves the day, calls out the experts, and says you are not the end all to make all decisions. And in all caps, game, set, match. She said experts around Dr. Fauci. Like, you don't, just because you're an expert doesn't mean that you're right necessarily, but he is an expert. You don't get to, like, that doesn't make any sense. And by the way, she's calling him an expert, Laura Ingraham, who for weeks masqueraded as some sort of like traveling like doctor selling hydroxychloroquine on the airwaves. Like, she pretended that she went to the White House to encourage Trump to push hydroxychloroquine more. And she's saying Fauci isn't an expert enough to be telling us what to do.
Okay, by the way, if you guys didn't hear, hydroxychloroquine, now definitively shown in studies, kills more people than it saves. So it was 100% wrong. Now the doctors are saying, do not give it. It is more likely to kill people than to save them. So the experts at Fox News and were shockingly wrong again. Yep. And last thing is, I can't stand the way that they just repeat themselves and then say, game, set, and match, as if they said something interesting or a fact at all. Rand Paul says scientists don't know anything, but Fox News hosts do. Game, set, and match.
But why, Jake, why shouldn't she? She sent out that message, which is ridiculous, nonsensical, and it's got 17,000 retweets.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, you're playing with your lives, right? Well, yeah. Good luck to you.
Okay, why don't we move on to something potentially more... Oh, okay. Well, we're getting towards the end of the hour, so we are going to need to take a break. When we come back, though, we are going to have the first details out of the Democratic, the new relief bill.
At TYT, we frequently talk about all the ways that big tech companies are taking control of our online lives, constantly monitoring us and storing and selling our data. But that doesn't mean we have to let them. It's possible to stay anonymous online and hide your data from the prying eyes of big tech. And one of the best ways is with ExpressVPN. ExpressVPN hides your IP address, making your activity more difficult to trace and sell to advertisers. ExpressVPN also encrypts 100% of your network data to protect you from eavesdroppers and cyber criminals. And it's also easy to install. A single mouse click protects all your devices. But listen, guys, this is important. ExpressVPN is rated #1 by CNET and Wired magazine. So take back control of your life online and secure your data with a top VPN solution available, ExpressVPN. And if you go to expressvpn.com/TYT, you can get 3 extra months for free with this exclusive link just for TYT fans. That's expressvpn.com/TYT. Check it out today.
All right, back in the Young Turks. Let me go to your comments as quickly as I can. Casper, the salty host, writes in, Bernie is so amazing. I love this questioning. He should be our president. I wish I could make that be a reality. Well, Casper, we all wish that, but it appears that time has passed. Don't worry, we'll get him, but not for now. So Grizzly, also a member, writes in, hey, I just signed up for NordVPN. It took me less than 3 minutes. Thanks for the discount, too. No problem. Love that you did. NordVPN.com/TYT. It's quick. I use it. It protects all my computers. And then I also want to, speaking of sponsors, mention aspiration.com/TYT. That also takes about 3 minutes. I've also done that. Put some of you don't have to put all of your money there. You can put some of your money there and try it out. And anytime you sign up for an account, they plant 10 trees, and they also continue to plant trees for you. And it's fossil fuel-free deposit. Last one's random, but it's fun. Shay Smith on YouTube Super Chat says, John, totally off the topic, but John, thanks so much for letting me know about Beyond Meat. Best decision I ever made. Delish. Barbecue was yummy and nobody knew. Okay, nice. There you go.
They're not a sponsor. I just eat it.
Yeah, they're not a sponsor, and nor am I vegan or vegetarian. Yeah. But I think it's great when people do that. So bless your heart. Keep going.
By the way, if you're an ad exec at Beyond Meat, I mean, we can work with you maybe.
Yeah, we're not saying anything. We're just saying. Hashtag what an advertiser. Anyway, well, and we do have trouble with those these days in coronavirus. So try to help us out with tyt.com/go. Whatever you can, obviously, in these tough times. All right, John, you're up.
Today, the Democrats in the House unveiled their next coronavirus relief bill, and we have some early details about what it includes and what it doesn't. Also, bear in mind, it is an 1,800-page bill, so there are things that we do not yet know about it. But here are some of the highlights. The bill would devote nearly $1 trillion to state, local, territorial, and tribal governments and establish a $200 billion HEROES Fund to extend hazard pay to essential workers. It would also send a second and larger round of direct payments to individual Americans up to $6,000 per household. So effectively, there's a certain amount for each individual person if you're joint filers, and there's up to 3 dependents. If you qualify for all of that, you could conceivably get up to $6,000. Bear in mind, I hear every day from many people who have not gotten that initial $1,200 yet. That was allocated something like a month ago. So just bear that in mind. But additionally, other parts of the bill would increase nutrition assistance benefits by 15% and provide $175 billion in housing assistance, among other things. A $600 weekly increase in unemployment insurance would be extended through January, and the bill directs another $75 billion for coronavirus testing and contact tracing. That unemployment insurance extension would extend it from when it was currently set to expire right now at the end of July.
Okay. Mixed here. So first of all, is it a good bill? Yes. Am I glad the Democrats introduced it? Yes. So should you give them credit? Yes, because they easily could have not introduced one or introduced one that was weaker, and then you would be starting at a negotiating point that is closer to the Republicans, and that would be counterproductive. Okay, so where's the downside? They know they're not going to pass it, so I'm really afraid this is just politics. Mm-hmm. And so, now their actions today are less relevant than their actions earlier. So what do I mean by that? When they were passing the bills that everyone thought was must-pass legislation, that is when they had the most leverage to negotiate with, battle Republicans. And we said at the time, they're barely doing that. And Pelosi said at the time, oh, don't worry, we're going to do another bill, and it's going to be great. And that's when we'll finally take care of American citizens more and not give everything away to giant corporations. She knew at the time that McConnell wouldn't agree. We said it. The rest of the media didn't. The rest of the media said, oh, no, don't worry, Pelosi's going to take care of it later. If she gets this bill passed, I will give her endless credit. Endless. Maximum credit. Okay, I'm telling you ahead of time. And you could hold me to it. She ain't going to get it passed. And she knows she's not going to get it passed. That's why she gave away the farm on the earlier bills, knowing that she was going to huff and puff later and use this for the election, knowing that it'd be incredible if she got half of it passed. She won't. And she knows it. So this is theatrics.
Yeah. And look, partly won't be able to get it passed because it appears that Mitch McConnell has decided that there will not be an electoral price to pay for just telling the American people to go die, like effectively Go lose your jobs, go lose everything and die, and we don't care. Like, that is the message he's giving. If it were up to Mitch McConnell, there would be no follow-up legislation. There would be nothing. Maybe another round for businesses or something like that. But he said today, in terms of checks, no, we need to put a pause on that. And yesterday, Lamar Alexander was saying, hey, we don't have money to save everyone. Like, they feel no pressure at all to do anything, even as their side of the spectrum is saying, it is, in fact, the economic suffering of the working class that means we have to reopen no matter what the doctors are saying. They're not going to do anything to relieve that suffering. They're just going to send people back to work to get sick and potentially die from coronavirus. So that's part of it. On Pelosi's part, if this is a fantasy bill, and to some extent it is a fantasy bill, it still only has a one-time stimulus payment. I mean, honestly, like if you're going to put a bill in that you know you're not going to pass, or at least not in the form it's in right now, you can't even have recurring payments going forward for the next 6 months, the next year, like many people say is necessary. And there are individual bills that do that. The Bernie Harris bill does that effectively. But in her version, the best case fantasy wish fulfillment version of this is a one-time check. If you fulfill certain extremely limited criteria.
Yeah. But even so, it does have money going to the states and even to Native American nations, et cetera. It has money for the post office. So in terms of, if you don't have a functioning media in the country, this is exactly what you would do. You would tell progressives, hey, look, man, I put a lot of the things that you wanted in this bill. I'm so good, progressives. You see that? Call me Mama Bear. And then you would turn the media and you go, look at how I'm looking out for the American people. And the media would parrot it and go, oh, my God, they're looking out for the American people. But on the bills you knew were going to pass, you'd play patty cakes and let the Republicans get 80, 90% of what they want. That's exactly what happened. Honestly, we're among the only shows that ever tell you the truth about it. And the reporters that cover politics, it's not like they don't know that she's not going to get this passed. They do know. And they know about this theater. They just never tell you. It's amazing.
Or explain why.
Faking it. She has no intention of actually passing this. They say, oh, my God, Madam Pelosi with a significant bill, etc. All right. Whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, and one other thing, too, it bears a little bit on what form the final bill, if a bill even does pass, what form it'll take. But also going forward, there's a quote. We want to jump ahead of the Mitch McConnell quote, Brett. Quote, we now have a debt the size of our economy. So I've said, and the president has said as well, that we have to take a pause here and take a look at what we've done. And this follows up with, I think, a Reuters article I saw yesterday was GOP rekindles its concern over deficits and the national debt. They're very worried about the amount of spending that's going on right now. So it's that time of year. It's like the cicada, like it goes into like you don't see it for years while Republicans are in control, and then the second either there's need for spending for regular people, or they feel like they're about to lose power, suddenly very concerned about fiscal discipline and deficits again.
Yeah, and so don't get me wrong. So the Democratic Party leadership's charade here is maddening, and it's our job to point it out and tell you what the reality is. At the same time, the reason they can't pass it is because of the Republicans. So Mitch McConnell didn't care about the debt at all, when they were passing $6 trillion for multinational corporations. Never talked about the debt, didn't care. So, oh, Fed, you want to print $4 trillion? Now, you know what the Fed is doing today? They're now buying risky corporate debt. No one even knows what it means for the Fed to buy corporate debt. What is it? No one knows what it means for the Fed to buy risky assets. When do you sell them? Do you sell them at a profit? If you do, what do you do with the profit? If you have a loss, what happens to that loss? I've asked everyone, the top experts in the country. No one knows. They're just printing silly money, monopoly money, and giving it to their friends. But then they're not concerned about the debt. The minute the Democrats, whether they're faking it or not, actually propose, and a lot of them, the progressives, are not faking it. They've been fighting from day one. Propose a bill that would actually help the American people. All of a sudden, Mitch McConnell's like, oh, my God, did you know we already spent all the money. Oh my, I'm so worried about the debt. No, regular people, you can go and pound sand. As we told you earlier in the show, the city that has the highest increase of coronavirus right now is in Kentucky. It's Central City, Kentucky, with a 650% increase. And McConnell couldn't care less. That is not his donors. So Republicans are the heart of evil. So you got to vote between a Republican and a corporate Democrat. You should vote for the corporate Democrat. But make sure you primary them and get real progressives in there. That's how politics works. Unfortunately, no one else in the country will tell you that. All right. So, all right, we got to go. But we have a monster post game for you guys. Elon Musk. Oh, boy. And then Trump surrogate gets way more racist than him, believe it or not. TYT.com/join to get the huge post game plus old school, which is coming up next. You can watch the beginning of that for free, so stay right here. And then special election coverage tonight with me, John, and Michael Schur starting at 6:30 p.m. Pacific. We got Nebraska, Carr Eastman, and we have California 25. Giant night for you guys tonight. We'll see you then.
Thanks for listening to the full episode of the Young Turks. Support our work, listen ad-free, access members-only bonus content, and more by subscribing to Apple Podcasts at apple.co/TYT. I'm your host, Cenk Uygur, and I'll see you soon.